Hi, my name is Gena Philibert-Ortega for GenealogyBank. This is the first in a series of videos where we will explore the GenealogyBank website, resources, and how you can tell the story of your ancestor's life. GenealogyBank provides access to historical newspapers, obituaries, government publications, digitized books, the Social Security Death Index, and U.S. Federal Census. You probably know us for our historical newspaper collection. We have over 13,000 newspaper titles and growing every day. What's most important about that collection is that 95% of our newspaper content is exclusive to GenealogyBank. It cannot be found on any other website. Historical newspapers are vital to your family history research. Just like other records, historical newspapers tell the vital record story of our ancestors, the birth, the marriage, the death. But unlike other resources, newspapers give us a look at our ancestors' day-to-day lives. We see their comings and goings. We see the tragedies and the celebrations. Newspapers provide rich content so that you can tell the story of your ancestors' lives. Let's take a few minutes to look at the GenealogyBank website and how you can search it to find newspaper articles about your ancestors' life so you can tell your family history story. I'm going to go ahead and search for my second great-grandfather on my maternal side. Now his name is Lars Peterson. And notice that I spelled his name S-O-N. It is spelled S-E-N. However, having done several searches for him, I know that he appears in newspapers with both names. And that's an important thing to consider because when we search for our ancestors in the newspaper, we need to take into consideration all of the name variations and not just limit our searches to one name spelling. We're going to do a basic, simple search. We're not going to do the advanced search because we're actually going to use some tools to narrow our search down once we get our results. So let's go ahead and search. Now, his name isn't that unique, and so I received over 2,000 results. So what can I do from here to narrow that down? Well, one of the things I can do is use these tools on the left-hand side of the screen. And as you can see, I could add a middle name, I could add keywords, I can also exclude keywords. Now, this is a really important tool when we're using GenealogyBank. If you have an ancestor whose name is maybe a noun or a verb or the name of a place, excluding certain words might be the difference between having way too many results and just the right amount. Including keywords like maybe the name of a wife, for example, might help you also narrow down your results to the person that you need. Now, I can also use tools that allow me to search for just a specific date. And if I knew, for example, the date his obituary was in the newspaper, I might want to do that. I could also use a range. So maybe I want a range of years for when he was alive. Maybe he has descendants that are named after him, and I don't want them in my results. I only want him. Then I could go ahead and use a range like 1853 to 1932. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow it down by place. Now, this isn't something you always want to do because people can appear in newspapers outside of where they lived. But for this example, let's go ahead and narrow it to Arizona. He lived in the White Mountains of Arizona, so we are going to go ahead and go to Arizona. That's going to narrow us down to 120 results. Now, I can further narrow that down to a specific newspaper place, publishing place, and so he was in the White Mountains, and so I'm going to narrow that down to two places actually, Holbrook and Snowflake, because he lived near there. And when I do that, I narrow my results a little bit more, so I just get 95 results. Now, I want to show you one more thing. You can sort your results so they are in a specific order. So right now they're according to relevance. And so this is the search engine telling me that these are the results it believes matches my Lars Peterson. But I want to use a different sort feature. Now I can choose oldest publication date, I can choose newest publication date, or most recently added. So I'm going to choose oldest publication date, and I often do this when I search for newspapers, especially if I'm looking for a specific person. He has descendants named after him, and I just want to get those results that I believe are him. And maybe also I want to get things in a timeline order. So I want to look at, newspaper results according to his lifespan. So for this example, I'm going to choose oldest publication date. Now, my newspaper results are going to be resorted, and now we have the oldest date to the newest date. So the earliest newspaper that it has found results for Lars in is 1896. So that's great. We're going to go ahead and go with that. Now, one more thing before we look at specific newspapers is at the top. The default on GenealogyBank is for you to see results from our newspaper archive. But you can go ahead and look at other results. So for example, obituaries, the U.S. Federal Census, the Social Security Death Index, government publications, and historical books. But for our time together right now, we're just going to look at newspaper articles. And so I want to point out a few of these newspaper articles that he appears in. So let's scroll down. And for our first one, we're going to look at this. From July 29th, 1899, this is from the Argus, and that was published in Holbrook, Arizona. And this is from a column that talks about the comings and goings there in Snowflake, Arizona. So this is for July 26, 1899, and it says that Lars Peterson and his daughter Edith came down last Saturday. He returned home the next day, but Miss Edith, who has a severe felon on her thumb, remained for medical treatment. All right, so Edith is my great-grandmother. And so this is a great article that talks about a father and his daughter coming into town, and she has a severe felon. He leaves her in town for medical treatment. Now, you might be scratching your head and saying, what is a severe felon? Well, if you look on the internet, you can see that a severe felon is an infection or an abscess on the end of your finger. And so that's what it is. And obviously before penicillin, that could be a very serious problem. And so she is my ancestor. This is from when she was a young child. And so obviously she was medically treated and it turned out okay. But this is a great example of an article that you might not expect to find, but comes up in your results. Now, let's go back to our results. And, there's all kinds of articles about him coming into town. Let me show you one more example. And this example is from 1906. And once again, it's from the Argus. And this one is from, a column where it has all kinds of mentions of people in town. Let me just show you that. Local and personal. And in this case, it says that Lars, a prosperous rancher from the Pinedale country, he lived in that area, was there Tuesday after supplies. So he had come to Holbrook to gain supplies. And so this is really great. If I didn't know what Lars did for a living, now I know he was a rancher. This is great for a timeline of his life to kind of see where he was, what his comings or goings are. It's almost better than a diary. So that shows you a few examples. Let's go to one other one where we're going to look at a vital record event that affects him, although it's not a vital record event about his life. Now we're going to go back to our results, and we're going to go back to 1897. And we're going to go to December 25th, 1897. And actually, he appears twice on this same page. You can see this tells us that he was down from Pinedale on Wednesday. But if I scroll down, I also find out what happened to him very recently. And as you can tell, this was published on December 25th on Christmas Day. And this is an obituary for his wife, Mrs. Christine Peterson. She also is my direct ancestor. He was married 3 times, and this wife died here in the United States. His first wife did not. But it tells us that she is the wife of Lars Peterson. She died at Pinedale on December 14th of pneumonia. She was buried on the 16th, and the funeral was held at the schoolhouse at 1 p.m. It also tells us she was a native of Denmark, and she was 38 years old. She was the mother of 13 children, 8 of whom were still living, and 5 sleep beside her in the silent city of the dead. So this tells us a lot. Now, you may think, well, it doesn't tell us enough. It doesn't tell us the names of her children or some more personal information, but it does give us an idea of what she died from, when and where the funeral was held, how many children she had at such a young age, and that 5 of them were already deceased by this date in 1897. Now, this starts us off, and we can then go and look for a death certificate, for example, and maybe even articles after this appears that may talk about the family and them thanking the community, for example. But this tells us an event that happened in Lars' life and impacted him and his remaining children very much, including Edith, who we have already heard about. Now, when we research for newspapers, we might be looking for vital record events like marriage and death. And like I said, Lars married 3 times over his lifetime. He buried his second wife, Christine, and then more than a decade later, he married for the last time in 1913. So let's look at that. Newspapers celebrate the happy times, they celebrate the sad times. That's the best thing about newspapers, is they are there for all kinds of events. Let's go one more. And we're going to be looking at June 13, 1913. And actually, this is the Holbrook newspaper again. Now, I love this article for lots of reasons. If you notice, it says, and they were wed. Now, this is really important because when we think about those keywords to include and exclude, we've got to make sure we don't make assumptions. So, looking for wedding or married doesn't help in this particular circumstance. Now, this announcement of the wedding to his third wife not only gives us genealogy information, but it provides us some detail about Lars himself, including that he was a wealthy retired cattleman who was well known, and that his wife, his third wife, was a recent immigrant. So we get a little bit more about Lars, we get information, vital record information, but we also get some personal information that can help us as we think about researching his life. Historical newspapers provide us information about the vital record events in our ancestors' lives, like birth, marriage, and death, but they also provide the details of their day-to-day life. Genealogy Bank can help you learn more about your ancestors so you can tell their story. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.